But I just feel like they should have, as much as I hate colons and semicolons in game names, I don't know. They should have named it like God of War Anthem Edition, or something like that.
Oh, no. God of War, let me ask you something.
Boy Edition.
God of War : Yick. So like I feel like,
no.
because you know what? This game was story heavy, just like Yick. I mean, they share that. Hey there, Super Agile family. You already know what it is. It's your boy Bradston with the boys, the Super Agile Bros themselves. We in the building. It's about to be a popping episode. But before we get it started, let me get the boys to introduce themselves. Mr. Kyle, how are you doing today? Tell the people hello.
What's up, Bradston? Hello, Super Agile Nation. Hope y'all doing well today. Glad to be here, man.
Yes. Glad that you are here as well. And of course, let's pass it over to the boy Steve. Steve, what's happening? I almost called him my captain. What's happening, my captain?
You can call me your captain.
Nope, absolutely not.
My name is Steve, and Captain Steve, and I am wearing boat shoes today.
Oh, in your in-office environment, you're wearing boat shoes?
Yeah, I was looking for some sandals because mine are starting to mess my feet up a little. I'm like, don't I have some slides around here? And then I found some boat shoes, and I'm like, I haven't worn these since I had that boat.
He does record from his yacht, so
yeah,
from your penny loafers that actually just have $100 bills stuffed in the penny loafer hole. I like it.
Yeah, they're hundo loafers.
Speaking of
socks.
Speaking of finding shoes. This weekend, me and my wifey, we went to go have some dinner, grab some food at a restaurant. And I had some brown shoes. Like, I have 2 different pairs of brown shoes. And I was like, maybe these brown shoes will go with my outfit, my fit. But this particular pair of brown shoes, I've had them near the front door. And I haven't touched them in probably like 3 months.
Nice.
And I have a rule, and I think any person who's kind of maybe grown up in the South, I don't know if in the South, but like ever had animals crawl into their shoes.
Oh, for sure.
I've always had the habit of turn my shoes over, knock them out, and do the thing. Well, guess what? Today I broke my routine. Well, not today, that day. And what I did was I was just trying to see if it looked right with my pants. So I slipped my foot into the shoe, and I was like, not really. I pulled my foot out, and when I pulled my foot out, I see something move real quick in the shoe. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I forgot to knock the shoe out. And I look in there, spider, 100%.
Oh, it's just a spider. That's not that bad.
Yeah, I mean, it was what it was. And the other shoe just was filled with cobwebs. So I was
hoping it'd be a cockroach.
Oh, no, I would have stomped the shoe out. I would have thrown it outside. A lizard. Ooh, a lizard. I would have liked the lizard in my shoe. I would have been like, hey, you my new friend.
The lizard would have eaten the spider.
Yeah, I like lizards. Matter of fact, there's some frogs in my neighborhood. And I've been like, I was telling Shailene today, we were going on a walk, and I was like, if there was a creature that I would have as a pet that I shouldn't have as a pet, it would be little frogs.
Frogs?
Yeah. I feel yeah.
Do you remember living in that house in Baton Rouge, how we would sometimes get frogs like stuck to our front door?
Yeah. I feel like that's a normal thing in Louisiana.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it seemed normal enough, but what was cool was that our front door had frosted glass and there was a light outside. And so we would just see these shadows of frogs on our door. It was really cool.
Yes. Yeah, you're right. I missed that. Just seeing their little frog presence guarding our doorway from all incidents. Because it's a smart place to hang out, too, because we had a light right above the door. So they were going ham.
Frogs really like plants, and Mrs. Yams has gotten into gardening lately, and we have a bunch of plants by our doors, and so we just have frogs all over the place.
That's wild.
And they come inside sometimes. They're not allowed to, but they do anyway.
They just knock like, can I come in?
And you stomp them out, right?
oh man.
Let this be a lesson to you.
Oh man, stomping out a frog. God, they're juicy. You don't want to do that.
Nah, I don't.
That's wrong.
They're juicy. They're soft. They're like little gushers.
Oh, everything about that just is disturbing. Like it's just just a little quick. But anyway,
Speaking of crushing things under your heel.
Yes, speaking of violence.
Transition.
Let's talk about what we're going to talk about today, which is something that we've all been looking forward to talking about. Finally, we all have completed the journey, the trek, the adventure that is God of War. And we're going to talk about it today. We're going to break it down. We're going to go deep. For anybody who is not looking for a spoiler-free conversation about God of War in any capacity, you might want to leave now because we're going.
You definitely want to leave now.
We're talking about everything.
Let's not mince words.
Yeah, you definitely want to leave now. If you don't mind getting spoiled, stick around. For some people who might be not interested in God of War, you can listen to the first part of our conversation and then realize I need to stop and then go play it. So, we'll see how that goes. But so everybody, let's confirm. Everybody here on this, I said this call. I have so many meetings. Kids so used to saying call. But everybody here on this podcast has played God of War, right? The newest one.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm just going to share my screen so I can verify.
I think it's really funny you keep asking. You've asked, I think, twice now today. Whether we've read.
I gotta make sure, man.
I'm about to change my answer.
Like, all right, we cut this off. So my next question was, has everybody here played the original, I guess, trilogy of God of War?
No, I have not. This was my first God of War experience.
How about you, Kyle?
I have played bits and pieces of each of them. I've watched them all played at length, so I'm familiar with them. But and I've seen some of the handheld ones played too. But like the original trilogy, I'm pretty familiar with.
Okay.
When I think of the original trilogy, the only image I have in my mind is Kratos doing, whipping these blades around, and Kratos cutting off the head of, I think, Helios.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have only played a little bit of God of War. And when I say a little bit, and I think I shared the story before when I was talking about one of our friends who I beat Hercules or whatever, or
oh yeah,
because he was struggling with it and I had never played God of War and I beat it on the first try. So that's pretty much my only playing experience. But I have downloaded the background over time of God of War and the story and everything behind it. So that's kind of, setting the standard. So, okay, cool. So let's jump into the most recent God of War. So first of all, what makes me a little bit upset about the game being called God of War is that if you're like searching for things on God of War, you have to type in God of War PS4. You know what I'm saying?
2018. God of War 2016 or whatever
2018, yeah.
2018? Is it that new? I thought it was older.
Yeah, 2018.
Yeah, 2018.
Okay.
Yeah, because it's like I get it. Like, it's the brand. It's kind of like, it's not a reboot. It's just like a continuation in a new generation. But I just feel like they should have, as much as I hate colons and semicolons in game names, I don't know. They should have named it like God of War Anthem Edition, or something like that.
Oh, no. God of War, let me ask you something.
Boy Edition.
Boy.
God of War : Yick. So like, I feel like, because you know what? This game was story heavy, just like Yick. I mean, they share that in common. So,
bro, it was a movie.
So, okay, let me ask you guys straight out the box. What is your review of God of War in general? And then we'll get into it. We'll talk about everything. So, I guess, what do you guys rate it? Of course, you don't have to put a score, whatever. But how do you guys review this game?
I'll let you go first, Steve.
Thank you for clarifying that we don't have to put a score. I like how you've been catering to me.
This is a safe space.
Few times.
This is a safe space for you, Steve. A safe space.
Just for me?
Just for you.
Just for you.
Wow. I feel so seen. Yeah, so I would say that God of War is nearly a perfect game. I think there are a few very specific problems that I have with it. That I have in mind. I'm sure I'll think of something else as we talk. But other than that, it was just, I don't want to say it was a joy, because when I say, oh, it's a joy, I'm thinking of like Mario Odyssey or something else that's delightful. But the game was just so solid.
Yeah.
The gameplay loop is incredible. The story is great. the presentation is actually perfect. If we're just talking about presentation, I think it's a perfect game.
Mm-hmm.
The graphics are pretty. I mean, I say pretty good. They're incredible, but
oh yeah,
I guess better games have come out. Yeah, like it. A lot of it was top notch, and aside from a very few specific things, I would say it's nearly a perfect game.
I like. Mr. Kyle?
Awesome. Yeah, I'll agree on most accounts. Definitely still a game. So yeah, it's got its drawbacks and a couple of little quirks about it. Have to agree presentation wise, the pacing was incredible. I said this before that I picked it up and I got a bit dismayed by the combat and a couple of my early experiences with the game. So I'm glad that I revisited it and gave it another chance. Because of just how deep and heavy and emotional and just great the story was, and then eventually the combat really opened up, and it was a fun experience through and through. As far as like the realism of the graphics go, definitely up there. And to me personally, I think that they're at a point to where photorealistic graphics, in my opinion, they can get better, sure. But once you get to a certain point, I already don't care, but I don't care to like nitpick after that either. And so, in my opinion, if they were going for a photorealistic looking game, I think they nailed it entirely. Like, especially from 2018, how it's aged. I think it's looking great on modern consoles. And if I had to rate the game, I would give it a solid 9.
Okay. No. Yeah.
Really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I mean, I think I echo everything you guys have shared so far. I mean, honestly, like, first of all, I think honestly the original games kind of turned me off from playing this game because I know a lot of people who love the original God of Wars, but for me, it just never resonated with me. I didn't like the feeling of the game. It felt very I don't know, visceral, but not in a way that I enjoy. Like, it just felt like I was watching somebody with anger problems, which is true. But like not in a way that felt meaningful. The story felt to me not super deep, even though there was deepness to it. Like, I don't know. So to me, this is not a game that I really was on my radar, was interested in, or even thinking of, even when I heard the reboot and announcement. I think it was when I heard about how people were talking about, oh, it's game of the year for 2018 or whatever, and man, this game is next level. And then it showed up on PS Plus for free, and I was like, let me check it out. And I just was like, wow, like this looks beautiful. And I think for me, the game, I think it really just spoke to me on so many levels. Like, I think the story is just so epic, so well written, so well paced. Every character feels meaningful in their time in the game. And like, I just really enjoyed every aspect from a narrative story standpoint. From a gameplay standpoint, it's not my favorite type of gameplay. It was a little bit too, I don't want to say unforgiving, but I don't know. It just never spoke to me, Like, I got it and I played it and I got good at it, but I just never, it's not a gameplay that I'm looking forward to going back into. But I think that's just my personal, you know what I'm saying? So if I were to rate it, I think I would give God of War, and you said it, Kyle, like photorealism. Like, to me, this is why I kind of don't think I care about the idea of a PS6. Because I'm like, if this is what you can do with a PS4, you know what I'm saying? And like, you can make it look even more beautiful on PS4. I don't need anything more than this. Like, keep it here and I'm good. Like, yeah, I'm pumped about the Matrix demo and everything going on with that. But like, honestly, this is good enough for me. I'm good. Let's just make games better and not worry about graphics. But anyway, I'd give it a 9.
Amen.
I'd give it a 9.5. The only reason why I don't give it a 10 is because I don't necessarily enjoy the combat that much, So, okay, I gotta say this before we go any further. I want to say I feel so good about myself since you guys have played this game. And what I mean is vindicated in the sense that I've been stomping the yard, as I would say, but like blowing the horn, whatever you want to call it, to say y'all need to play this game. Y'all need to play this game, you know? And I know, like, from your experience, 3Ms, aka Kyle, like, you didn't have the great start with it. And I don't know, Steve, did you even really care about this game other than us bringing it up? Like,
So I mentioned this a while ago. I bought the game on sale, and it was just a game that I always had on my backlog, and I'm like, I'll play it. But there were always shinier games I cared more about.
Mm-hmm.
So I knew it was incredible. I knew I would probably love it. It was just something that seemed, like we talked about, it seemed like it was maybe too big of a commitment to pick up at any given moment. So I just kept putting it off.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, you gave me a reason to just sit down and do it.
So Kyle, what is the likelihood if we hadn't decided that we were going to do this on the podcast, if I hadn't stomped the yard per se, that you think you'd pick up this God of War game and play it?
To be honest, probably 0% likelihood. Just because I'd already tried the game, and so I had an opinion already about what the experience was going to be like, and there's nobody else that I can think of that would have suggested the game. And and there's infinite amounts of games coming out. We talked about this in the last episode.
Yeah.
That there's no shortage of other games to play, and so there was really I can't foresee any other reason I would have come back to this game.
Yeah. I'm happy that we all got to play it. I'm happy that this happened, because it's like one of those moments where I'm like, man, I'm happy I didn't miss this in my lifetime. Like that I could talk about this. Okay, so let's get into the game. I want to start with the gameplay before we get into the story, because there's so much to talk about the story. There's so much to get into. For this game, I actually wrote a few notes. I never write notes for these episodes, by the way, for everybody listening. So that's like a big deal. So what do you guys feel about God of War from a gameplay standpoint? Did you guys enjoy it? What was your vibe on it? Where were you after, when you got to the end of the game? How do you feel? I just would like to hear what you guys think about the gameplay. Yeah.
Okay. So first of all, the first thing anyone would probably notice is that this is a difficult game. I think you said unforgiving.
Mm-hmm.
So the game modes, if I remember correctly, are, they're named funny, but essentially they boil down to easy, normal, hard, and then like very hard, which is godlike or something. And they let you freely switch between difficulty except for godlike. Once you start in godlike, the only way to go to an easier mode is to start over, which that's a pretty cool idea. So I figured, hey, I don't feel like doing that. Let me just do hard and, get my money's worth out of this game. And I could not beat the first encounter. I mean, I probably could have if I kept trying, but I died like 5 or 6 times, and I'm like, I don't think I'm getting any better. And I don't know. I don't want to do this the rest of the game. So I went down to normal and played like a normal person. I think the fighting is pretty cool. I liked everything. Felt sad, like all the hits, throwing the axe, recalling it. It all felt really satisfying. All the timing feels good. So I love the fighting. Well, I like the fighting pretty good. I like walking around, and I love the camera. I do think that the least favorite part of the gameplay for me is actually climbing. He climbs kind of slow. And climbing is almost like a quick time event. Like you have to get to the point where he can jump from one point to another, and that's when you can jump. It's like a button prompt and you can jump, but only if you're facing the right direction, which is kind of cool. I like that it kind of feels like exploration almost. Like you actually have to be looking where he's looking at the next spot. But what I don't like is that if I'm climbing a ladder or like a straight rock face, I can't just jump or something to make the climbing faster.
Yeah.
And if I'm climbing down, I can't just fall. I have to slowly climb all the way down. And so I was, I was very eager to not climb if I could help it. I'm like, all right, I have to climb to get to the next little area. I'm not going to go until I know that I don't have to come back down here for something, because I hated it. There were some points where you could kick a chain down after you had gotten to, basically you could checkpoint yourself. If you climb to a certain point, you can kick a chain down, and that'll make it easier to get back to that if you want to come back this way. But I hated doing that too, because if you kick the chain, he immediately starts climbing down the chain.
Right.
And I have to, no. I didn't want that. To me, that felt like just a straight up bad decision. Yeah. I'm like, can I not just kick the chain and then have a button prompt to climb on the chain if I want to do that?
Right.
I want to, before you continue, I want to actually say that I agree with you on the climbing thing. And it's interesting because I think it's one of those things that really annoyed me, but I also really respect their decision for why they did it the way that they did it, because it made the frustration of it almost is kind of how you would imagine Kratos feels. Because if the reason he can't really move fast is because he has his son, on on his back, and he always
like a monkey.
Yeah, like who if like Atreus is all the way across the room and you jump on a chain, he just teleports to your back. That's my favorite thing. But I think I appreciate it because it kind of like makes you realize, like, yo, even though you're the god of war and you're doing all this stuff, like, you still have to slow down for a moment. You have to still think about this other person, because I feel like a lot of the game would be a lot easier at points, particularly traversal, if like this man could just be himself and just one arm
jump
right,
climb a wall,
But that's how you did in the other God of War games. He would use his the Blades of Chaos, I think, is that what it's called? Yeah, he would like stab those into whatever he was climbing and then do these leaps to get everywhere. So it was a whole lot quicker. The camera was pulled out, so he felt faster because he was zipping around. So yeah, it was a big departure from how he used to feel too.
So I mean, it's a good point. I think maybe it was a good decision. I think perhaps given that decision, they maybe should have less climbing in more of the like mundane parts of the world. Like, it makes sense sometimes, and like if you're delineating areas from each other. But I mean, just going from room to room, it was really frustrating. One cool thing about that is that sometimes you would be climbing like a cliff or around an edge of like a building, and people would be inside or up at the top of the cliff, and you're so slow that it gives you time to just overhear their conversation.
Yeah.
That was a really cool storytelling element, because usually, you'd have a cutscene or something. But in this case, they were like, let's not do an actual cutscene. Let's just play the cutscene out and keep you from being able to interact because you're climbing.
Yeah, I always appreciate that in games. I hate in games when you're trying to get to point A to point B and they're like having a narrative moment, and then you get to that point a little bit too fast and it just ends that, and you're like, oh, what was being said? Like, I wanted to hear what they're saying,
Yeah. I would. The first time it happened, I was climbing up towards the top of the mountain, and Baldur was there with his nephews, and they were talking about finding me, and I stopped climbing. I waited for the conversation to end.
Same, 100%.
And then they stopped talking, and I kept climbing. I'm like, oh, I had like 2 more minutes of climbing.
Right.
Could have just done that.
Yeah. Yeah, they were like, the person can't move any faster than this speed. So as long as we keep I mean, to me, that's crazy. Like, how much coordination do you have to have, like, from a from a production standpoint? Like, there's so many moving pieces. So that's really cool. Yeah.
Yeah, the nuances.
That's another element. It's not a gameplay element really, but again, I'll say the production was insane. The way that the characters interacted almost never felt uncanny. If Mimir was telling a story on the boat and I get out of the boat, he'll get to a stopping point and he'll be like, and that's a story for another time. He'll just quit talking. And then when you get back in the boat a few minutes later, Atreus will remember and be like, what were you saying, Mimir? And he'll pick up where he left off.
So good.
So good.
So good. Yeah.
Almost as good as Hades. Okay. But yeah, that was one of my nitpicks with the game was traversal. But yeah.
Yeah. I go ahead, Kyle. Yeah.
I was just agreeing. You go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say one of the things that talking about traversal and just like moving around the game. So like I think for me, like I said earlier, like the combat isn't really my vibe, but I did enjoy what it was doing. I enjoyed the nuances of it. I think my biggest issue, and I think we've talked about this in the earlier episodes, is like having to remap my brain around the inputs, the L1, the R1, the R2, the circle, the square, the triangle. Like how do they all come together? And knowing that I need to sometimes hold R1 and then do another thing to do a thing. Mm-hmm. So a lot of times what I feel like I could accomplish in another game was me going, wait, what do I need to do? Processing, doing the input slowly, you know what I'm saying? Or accidentally triggering an event, triggering a power that I didn't want to because I did L1, R1, L, you know what I'm saying? And I also felt like the equipment in the game, like, just never made sense to me. And I never cared to figure out what was going on.
Like, I was actually going to bring that up later.
Yeah, like,
I didn't think that was like gameplay, but
for me, like, that really kind of dampened a little bit, and probably why like kind of a 0.5, maybe a 0.2 is taken off, because I really felt like, why am I buying anything? Why am I investing in upgrading anything? Because anytime I upgrade a thing, I just get a new thing that's better than the thing that I started upgrading. So I was like, why am I wasting my time even paying attention to this? All I'm going to do is whenever I get something new, if it's better than what I have, equipped it, you know? And then all of the different attributes and like powers that did a thing that it just never made sense to me. Like, it never felt different when I swapped out little, add-ons or whatever. So I don't know. It just felt like maybe the RPG element was kind of a afterthought or something. Like,
I don't know if it was an afterthought.
I don't know. It just it didn't feel meaningful.
It felt way too subtle.
Exactly.
And
it was both subtle and dense at the same time.
Exactly.
Yeah. So what you said is totally true. I never wanted to upgrade anything because A, I couldn't really feel the upgrades, and B, it just felt like, what was the point? Because at any moment I could find something in the world that was more powerful. Even my skills, I'm like, should I up? It was never clear if or when I needed to upgrade something. Maybe that will come with more time, because I do plan on continuing to play and fighting the Furies. Sorry, I keep saying Furies because I've been playing Hades, and I'm just always in like Greek mythology.
Valkyries.
It's the Valkyries.
Valkyries, yeah.
It's the Valkyries.
Yeah.
Anyway, totally
Similar
different.
vibe.
I do plan on fighting the Valkyries, and for that I will probably need to sharpen my equipment and figure out, some strats in terms of the powers I imbue the equipment with. But yeah, up to this point, I haven't really felt the need. And things like luck, so that change your perk ability, or how often you can get the low perks and the high perks. Runic, I guess, is just how much elemental damage. It took me a long time to understand like what that was about. I'm like, oh, it's the burn and the freeze damage.
So let me ask you, Kyle, was Runic a thing in the old games? Like, was that a attribute that somebody who played the original God of Wars would have been like, oh yeah, Runic makes sense?
I'll be honest with you, I don't remember it. So I don't know.
Yeah, it felt like one of those things where, like, if you were playing like Mass Effect 3 and you didn't play the first two, maybe there's something that like players who didn't play forever already knew what it did. And they never, like, even explanations of things just left me more confused. I'd be like, what? Like, what is Runic? Like, what does this do?
The Runic...
You know what? To their credit, I love that they made those explanations available on the stat screen with just a single press of the button at any point.
Yeah.
Because I definitely had to refresh myself. And as I played more and got more context, like, oh, right, because different weapons have different, like, elements, I was like, okay, that's what... So, like, it made more sense as I played, but at the beginning I was so confused. Like, what is luck?
Yeah.
What is vitality?
And then whenever, especially in the late game, but when you're going through your skill tree and getting your new skills and stuff, then the levels you had all those skills at, or the different attributes, it didn't gate you, but it some of them were more important, I guess, to the point to where you could unlock like secondary skills and like extra burst damages and stuff. But I never found a set of armor or even the little sockets that got me noticeably like higher in number, but like in a way that was still balanced to where I wasn't like having 10 defense here in the late game or something weird.
So something that really I never understood was the leveling system. Like, I got that, like, if I added things to my thing to make it better, it would go up a level, like from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4. But like,
I didn't know that.
Like, yeah, like if you and then you like upgraded it, it would become a better version. But it, like, I think you said it, like, it was so subtle. Like, it's like it didn't really matter. Because what, you know what I did, just as an experiment, for a decent portion of the game, I never changed any of me, sounding like a Jamaican, any of me equipment, any of my equipment. Like, I just simply just played. And I found that the difficulty spiked a little bit as far as like damage I took. But like, as far as like output damage, it felt like I was still on par with where I needed to be. Yeah. So I was like, oh, okay. So really equipment doesn't matter. It's just more about my personal skills at this game.
Yeah, the skills were fun. I liked learning new skills. I definitely got to the point where I forgot that I had certain skills, and I'd be in the skill tree and be like, oh my God, I haven't used this at all. I spent like 5,000 experience points on this. So I had to make a habit of like, when I unlocked a skill, I had to immediately practice it just so I would know like, okay, this is what this feels like. Because when you're playing, you might not even realize that you're using a certain skill, or you might be confused, like, what just happened? There were a few skills which I appreciate that they went this way, where it was like, if you it was one for your axe and also one for your blades, but if you stopped swinging, he would change stance, and then when he started swinging again, it would be different swings.
Yeah.
But they don't like explain why that's better. It's just different. I guess if you look at it, what he's doing, you're like, oh, he's like doing wider attacks, like do more damage, or that hit in a wider area in front of him.
And that's what I kind of felt about this game in general. Things weren't better; they were just different. Like, they never, they were just like, does this something you prefer, or do you prefer this thing? Like, because even the stance switching thing, first of all, let me tell you this. I got better at the game. I beat the game, of course. But like, I never felt that great at this game. Like, I always felt like there was some gap I was missing. So when I saw the stance switching thing, like, okay, medium attack, wait a second, let him switch his stance, then do another attack. I was like, I don't trust myself to put myself in that scenario. Like, I'm going to keep the pressure on them. Because the moment I lose a little bit, then they work me,
For sure.
So
that was absolutely this is a small mob, and I can breathe. But if I'm like fighting a boss, or even like one of there were so many monsters in this game that can just one-shot you. Which I appreciate that they didn't just go with the route of overwhelming you with numbers. But it really makes me wonder, like, why can so many random monsters in this world one-shot a god? It really irked me.
Yeah.
But yeah, if I'm fighting one of those guys, I'm not going to be, just going for style. I'm definitely going to just keep mashing my heavy and light attacks and spamming Atreus' arrows.
Yeah. I felt like a lot of times when I got the upgrades that actually got worse, because I was just starting to get familiar with the moves that I had, and then some of them it like adds an extra attack or something, and because the game's so realistic, like the animation frames, like sometimes there'll be this huge delays between a swing, and it won't be so much of a miss input, but just like an unfamiliar input, and so then he'll go into doing this thing, and then I'll get hit. And so I agree with the whole like the stance change thing. because you do have to stop swinging for him to do that. And I didn't feel like the combat was set up for something like that, to where, because they will hit you in the back, they'll shoot at you. Like there was rarely a time to breathe. Like if you weren't swinging, you must have been blocking or dodging or running to go find some health or something. But I don't think you would ever stop pressing the input so that you can do some different, like you said, attack in a second.
Yeah. So here's a question. What were the strengths? Like what were the elements of the fighting that you guys, or let me rephrase that. What did you guys find useful in the fighting? So I'll say I found Atreus' arrows super useful. I spammed those all the time because they would like stagger opponents, and you can get chain damage for the lightning arrows. And then he had one of the summons that he had was like a bunch of crows, and once I found that, I never used anything else. It was so sick. It would just hassle like an entire mob of enemies for like 20 seconds, it felt like, and I'm like, sweet, I'm just gonna go to town. It's one of the last ones I got.
Yeah, I mean,
the shield. I got really good at blocking and returning fire and stuff with the shield and just being barehanded. I didn't use a lot of throws, especially with more mob enemies. I didn't use. I didn't really upgrade my blades much at all. I was like, yeah, I'll just do the normal swings.
Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, you get them pretty late in the game. I think they noticed that. So the skill tree for them is a little bit, it feels like it's a whole lot less, expansive than the one for the axe. And even Atreus's. Like, you just get a couple more swings.
Yeah, I feel like Atreus was cool. Like, I would use him, with arrows from time to time whenever like I thought about it. But to me, really the biggest thing was his special. Like whatever his special was like very helpful. Like I liked using the stupid like elk or whatever it was, just because how disrespectful it was. Like it wasn't necessarily the best move, but I loved to just walk slowly across the field, just kind of like aggroing everybody. So I was like, okay, like I liked any move that kind of slowed the pace down a little bit.
Cool.
Cool. Like the crows were good because, like you said, they kind of stunned people or made them like, okay, stop for a second, so I could kind of adjust. Or if people were behind me, or what, I could move and get some space. And I liked throwing the axe at people's faces. For some reason, I loved seeing it hit them in the face and flash blue, and then I'll just throw it again and hit them in the face again, and I'll just... So there's some fights...
I did like that.
There's some fights that were 100% supposed to be more epic, but I would just go around and be like, all right, how many of them can I catch with this axe? And like not let them get to me. And I would just bink, 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 bink. And then I try to style on them like, oh, I gotta fight you with my hands now. And then I'd bring it back and hit him through the chest and be like, got him. Hit him in the face again. Bink. So I was having fun with the throwing the axe quite a bit.
Cool.
Yeah, so the special I used with Atreus was the wolves. And especially with the shock arrows. It was kind of like a combination between the crows and the elk, because they wouldn't fly around. And when you upgraded it was just 3 of them, but they were really big. And so when they were, electrified, then they'd jump all around and cause this area of effect where it would just stun them, kind of like the elk. But then whenever they pounced, they'd also knock enemies over. And they'd stay out what seemed like, 10 or 15 minutes. I mean, it was a couple seconds, but the summons always lasted so long. And it was really helpful whenever, because it happened a lot, especially like later you just be surrounded. And so just pop in that summon and then the fight just be over. You hear the music fade. It was always satisfying.
Like, I don't even know what happened, baby. Yeah, I like the wolves a lot too. I think that's probably actually what I use more, like throughout most of the game. But I use the elk just to style on people because it was unnecessary. Let me ask you guys this, because this is actually one of the parts that I don't know why as a gamer bothered me the most, because I couldn't walk away from them. If I ever saw one of those stupid little symbols, the little Greek looking symbols or whatever, like for a chest.
The puzzles?
Yeah, the little puzzles.
Oh, yeah.
It would stop me in my tracks. Like, I would be doing something. I'd be like making progress. I see one of them, and then I'd spend the next 5 to 10 minutes trying to solve it. And there was one particular one. It was after you fought the two brothers, and I think after you killed, what was his name, Magni or whatever. Where because that was when you were in the big giant on the one of the giants, right, on his body. You were moving throughout his body. And you had to climb up this like wall, but when you're on the bottom level, there was like a few of those little things, right? But I couldn't find the third one, and I literally spent like 30 minutes searching for it.
I think I know the exact room you're talking about.
And it was like this. It was just like this big room, and like you had to climb, and there was like
it's like a frozen waterfall. Or
something like yes. I think that's exactly it.
Yeah, that I couldn't find it either.
I had to. I did. It hurt me in my soul, and I was like, I can't leave this room, knowing there's one of them sitting here, and I just had to look it up online. I try to avoid doing that at all costs in the game, but for some reason those were cool and all, and also there were so many random collectibles like. Oh, I get a heart of apple of this, and then a heart of this, and then this and that, and 1 of 3, and 3 of 3, and 2 of 3. And I felt like maybe I was missing some or whatever. But anyway, those puzzles really, I don't know. For some reason, they bothered me because, like, I just couldn't keep playing the game. Like, I was like, I got to get it now. I might not even use this because I never upgrade anything. But if it's one of the health ones, that really matters to me. So, you know.
I actually really, really liked the puzzles. I felt like most of them were excellent puzzles. I mean, they're basically physics puzzles, and they beg you not just to explore and to like manipulate the world. There was a cool one where you had to like move the floor up and down to expose different portions of it. Mm-hmm. But my favorite puzzles were the ones that revolved around the axe, like physics. Like throwing it a certain way or just having good aim.
Yeah, the bell ones were really good about that.
Yeah, the bell ones drove me crazy.
Well, the puzzles, I think I was just talking particularly about the chest ones where you have to hit the little symbols, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, the symbols were on the bells.
Okay, yeah. I like the puzzles where it was like you had to stop a thing and then like another thing, with the frozen axe.
I mean, yeah, those are great. I'm specifically talking about the rune puzzles. I thought a lot of them were well done. And yeah, there was definitely some that I just couldn't find, and I'm like, I didn't look it up. I gave up. I hated to do it, but I'm like, I'm not going to sit here for another 15 minutes. And again, it's because I didn't like climbing. I'm like, look, I don't see it up here. I don't think I saw it down there, but I don't care enough to go back down there and check.
Yep.
So thank you for the climbing traversal. I probably would have solved more puzzles if the climbing was more fun.
Yeah, and I mean, I think also you were kind of playing, I don't want to say this, but you were kind of playing under duress, right? In the sense that you're trying to finish it so we could talk about it.
Right. Yeah, not under duress necessarily, but I was fighting against my normal tendency, which is to just do anything I want, not play the main story, do all the side quests, do whatever I want, really. And I was like, look, I can't just dilly-dally in this game. I don't have a lot of time to play, and we're trying to talk about it for the podcast. And not just for the podcast. Honestly, I've just been trying to get out of that habit in general and just play the dang game.
Enjoy the experience.
So, yeah, I'm like, there's better things to do in this game than climb up and down this stupid rock face. So I'm just going to dip out.
Yeah, I have a similar sentiment about the puzzles where I think early on it kind of gave me false hope about how they were going to go, because the first couple of chests, and I know they want to teach you how it works, but the things you have to break are really nearby. And so you'd go a little bit ways and you have to, go around corners after a while, and to break them, I called them the CRN puzzles because that's what they look like letters to me. Yeah. And so I was like, oh, I found the C. And so now I got to find the chest. And then usually the other two are like really close or something. Yeah. But then it got to the point to where, like Steve was saying, they'd be so spread out or so well hidden, I guess, that I just simply would lose interest. I was like, I appreciate, okay, the devs, they were just having fun, right? They were hiding these things in nooks and crannies. I can appreciate that, but I'm not into it. So I'm going to just, and then after getting quite a few of them, and having the 1 of 3, 2 of 3s, not really knowing what's in them, and then going throughout the game, and like we're saying, all these different stat bonuses and changes weren't super noticeable. Even when I got the extra health, it seemed like the enemies were also getting stronger. So it was kind of balancing out. And so, I was like, well, if I can get more defense, then I should be fine. And my theory was right, pretty much. I pretty much just stacked defense instead of worrying about health or anything.
Interesting.
Yeah. Because like you were saying, whenever I did switch my armor and upgraded armor, I kind of tested these theories to see if having high attack actually made a difference in fights for me, I guess for my playstyle. So maybe if I played differently, it would have had a bigger impact. But no, I just died more. And so I switched back to having higher defense.
And that's something that bugged me, actually, was that you can't have... Well, let me not say you can't, like it's some sort of rule, but it didn't feel very good that the enemies seem to be on some sort of level system that is not obvious to me. Mm-hmm. The only way I know if an enemy is strong is if the health bar is purple. But I don't even think that's like a set level. I think it's just too strong for you level, And it also didn't feel like a given enemy type had a set level. Like it feels like later in the game, the same Hellwalkers you see in the beginning of the game are just like way stronger. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, why? It doesn't feel good that I beefed up my attack and my armor, and I'm still having trouble with what I, in my head, think of as like low-level mobs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe I suck and they are just low-level mobs at a constant level, but it really felt like they were scaling with me. And I'm like, who wants that?
Doing that. I mean, I think that's one of the things that, and I guess I'll mention this now, was that like right before, because, Steve, you were playing, I had finished a long time ago. And I was like, I should start playing it again so I can get like re-upped on it so I could talk about it. But I was like, but there's other games. I want to play Spider-Man. I want to do this, So I've been waiting. So like last week, I was like, let me just start restarting the play, get used to the gameplay again so I could talk about it. And I think one thing that you're right in the sense that like I never felt like powerful, Like, I always felt like it was still, you know what I'm saying? Like, I never got that point where I was like, yeah, I'm a boss. Like, I'm a boss. Yeah. I'm just working these fools. And of course, I respect that there will be enemies that are going to work me and they're on my level. But every fight felt like I got to be on my P's and Q's. I remember there's some fight on an elevator where, like toward the end, I think, you're going on an elevator and enemies keep coming in from like different.
Oh, yeah, the tower when you're headed to Jotunheim.
Is it the one where the elevator's on like a magic elevator and you have to stop them from killing the magic?
And you just keep going and they just keep coming out and I was just getting worked, son. Like it felt like, and I get it, that's toward the end of the game or whatever, but that kind of is how summarizes my experience with the game. I kept going up, but it never felt like I was getting greater, So I mentioned the whole thing of like starting the game over. So I finished the game and I see there's a New Game Plus. Now, my experience with New Game Plus, and maybe I had the wrong expectations, is that when I go into New Game Plus, I'll be a bit overpowered at the beginning, Like, I'll kind of, like, have all my stats, all my weapons, all my skills. So, like, the introduction enemies will kind of be a cakewalk. And and then, like, when I get further in the game, maybe when I go fight the Valkyries and stuff like that, I'll get a challenge. But I was like, I'm excited because I'm going to be just working these fools. So New Game Plus, they give you the same options, easy, normal, hard, very hard. I took normal, assuming, hey, awesome. Bro, I literally died 4 to 5 times on the first fight in the game. Dude,
really?
In New Game Plus?
New Game Plus. Maybe I am misremembering, but these first enemies were doing like fireball attacks, doing like I dash at you, hit you with fire, stun you, throw a fireball. Another dude is like murking me. Like it was crazy. Like I felt like I was fighting on hard mode. Like, and I have all my abilities, son, like all of them. And I mean, I hadn't played in a while, so it was like, a little bit of rust. So at first I thought, okay, maybe it's just I'm not playing. But then I realized, yo, these dudes is like serious. Like, these feel like end game enemies right here. Like, was there fire-based dudes who were dashing across the ground, leaving fire, like, area things where you ran into them and took damage and got stunned? And then there's dudes
I don't remember
throwing
that.
stuff in the first fight of the game.
Like near your house?
Yes. I'm talking about when you're going to hunt with Atreus. Like,
no, it was just common Draugrs.
Dude.
I think they could throw fireballs and that was it.
Dude, these guys murked me. Like, multiple times. I finally beat them and I was like, I gotta put this game down. Like, it was way too much. And that to me told me the philosophy of God of War is not the game that I'm thinking. Because I actually remember, like, shout out to Marcus, the boy Marcus. He used to play it, and he used to play it on like the hardest difficulty. And the game was known for like these really long, intense, hard battles. And I was like, oh, this is what it is. So New Game Plus was not like, it just felt like hard mode, but I'm starting over.
Skilled Game Plus.
Yeah, like I have all my abilities, but it's just hard, and I couldn't play story mode or the easy mode. I was like, I can't do it. So I just put the game down and said, I'll just go from memory.
So I played to get refamiliar too, because I finished the game a couple of weeks ago. And rather than, because I was tempted to try New Game Plus, I'm glad I didn't, because hearing it from you, the third person or secondhand perspective is enough for me. But I actually tried the other side of things where, because it's been so long since I played the game, I was like, I don't really feel like getting into fights that I can't handle. So I actually switched it to story mode while I was running around. And the difficulty, in my opinion, didn't change. Just how many enemies appeared changed. Yeah. It seemed like it was just less enemies, but they weren't any easier to kill. And again, it's been a couple of weeks, so maybe I just got that much worse at the game, but I don't know.
That's not a bad difficulty setting, though. I mean,
no, it made sense, especially if, from what Brad's saying, the philosophy is the game is just going to continue to get harder, then you would still want your enemies to be tough, but so.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's hard for me, like, I'm a gamer, a hardcore gamer. So to me, like, rarely am I ever going to use easy mode. So I don't necessarily know what it feels like to be a person who plays most of their games on easy mode, And so I don't know what that experience would be like. Would it be a deflating experience to feel like you're getting murked in easy mode by like less enemies? You know what I'm saying? Because less enemies will still murk you. I've fought 2 or 3 dudes and just was playing around and wasn't paying attention to my back, and I got, or wasn't really paying attention to my health from a previous fight. So,
right.
Yeah, I don't know.
Speaking of getting got in those fights, I have a question for you guys about the combat. So, there was a slowdown mechanic type thing. Whenever you got hit, so the enemies, before they hit you, they have either that yellow or that red ring show up.
Right.
And whenever I happened to get hit by a red ring, it would slow down my game, or like everything would slow down as if I dodged, but I'd be in a getting hit animation and I couldn't do anything. And I usually get juggled or comboed rather, because they don't really knock you up. And so I have is there a way to break that state or something? Or was I missing something?
I think so. You know how when you typically the big advantage that a player has over the NPCs is that you can stagger the NPCs. But no, that's you being staggered, my friend.
Yeah.
Man, it felt terrible.
Yeah. They just don't get. They just wanted. Yeah, they were telling you, do not get hit. Oh, matter of fact, that's what it was. The enemies in the first fight were doing red attacks on me, like continuing. And I was like, whoa, what? I can't block these boys? Like, I'm over here dodging, like. And I've been playing The Witcher, and their dodge mechanic is very different. So I was just getting worked. Yeah, that's what it was. Yeah, I feel like.
I guess what was.
Yeah, go ahead, Kyle.
I was just saying. I guess what was confusing to me is that I've seen that in other games, where you are staggered, but since you are the player, you have the plot armor, so you can either mash through it or something. And so it just felt weird to me that you'd also have this slowdown effect, as well as you couldn't there was no inputs you could do to get out of it. And so I was like, I'll eat the 3 hits, but why do they have to be prolonged into 15 seconds?
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. I would love to hear from somebody who played God of War a lot more, if there's some precedence to that, you know. And I don't know if y'all remember, there's a fight where, like, I can't remember the enemy, but it was like in a gorge, and there's like a chest down there, and there's like this enemy down there who, if he hit you one time, you were done. And
he was purple. I remember you talking about
I was not ready for this.
Yes, I did too. I beat that guy.
Yeah, I beat him eventually, but I was not ready that first encounter. I was like, oh, it's a normal dude. Yeah. He does his red attack. I was like, what is happening?
But I actually was thinking specifically of that character like in the last 5 minutes, because I was going to say there was one really hard enemy that I don't know, but it seemed like they put him in a perfect position for me, because I was like trying to get better and this guy pops up. I'm like, oh, perfect. So I just let him kill. Well, I didn't let him, but I kept fighting him and dying to him a couple times until I learned, like, okay, this is what I need to dodge. This is the timing I need. These are some attacks I can do to cheese him and take more damage out quickly.
Yeah.
So that was like helpful for me. It helped me learn the mechanics.
Yeah.
And you had the incentive because, he was protecting one of the chests.
Mm-hmm. And it was one enemy. So that gave you
It was one enemy. Exactly.
Very like, okay, he's doing this. How do I approach this? Because, when there's like 2 or 3 dudes and one of them's a problem, it can be a little bit more difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's interesting to me because at the end of the, like, this is a single player game, but Atreus adds a different element to it, right? Like, he's kind of like your co-op buddy. And man, Atreus sometimes would be working fools. And I'd be get it, Atreus. Like, thank you. Like, really help. So, I mean, could you imagine this game being a co-op game? Like, where somebody could play Atreus as, like, player 2, where they're kind of like the bowman. Like, they don't have as much, maybe, health or whatever, and they're not as strong, but they're kind of like a support character. Like,
kind of like a Knack, maybe?
Oh, my goodness.
Well, not as good as Knack.
Not as good. That's the gold standard. But yeah, like, could you imagine this game as a co-op game? Because I could. I really would love to be like, hey, Shailene, you want to play with me? Like, you're gonna play as Atreus. And
as a separate mode, I think that would be cool. But for the story beats, Atreus being his own character, I think
makes sense. Yeah,
felt better. And then also because your boy couldn't die was really
that was really helpful.
Yeah, you didn't have to worry about him. Yeah,
because he was great at aggroing, and so if you have to rely on another person to do that, and they're just a little boy, they're likely going to get one shot all the time. You have to go revive them or something dumb, and so not having to deal with any of that mess was great.
That's interesting. Yeah, I can imagine them putting him in as like he can't be killed, but he can get stunned. Like, how sometimes he would be unavailable to do his attacks. So like that would be like the best option. But I guess you could just cheese that if you're smart. But yeah.
Couldn't he die? There were some moments where like a nightmare might pick him up or something, and it'd be like, Atreus needs your help, and you would have to go over and break him off.
I don't know.
I don't know what happened if you didn't help him.
I mean, there are situations where I was just getting worked, and I know Atreus was getting worked too. And he never died in my game, so I don't think he can. I definitely don't think it's a game over condition.
That would be a good thing to kind of lab, because in those situations it was always really tense, and I'd always prioritize going to get him because I was pretty deep into a fight and didn't want to start over if he died. So yeah, I didn't let it happen either.
Yeah, I don't recall ever. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I can't say I was very good at the game, so I very much feel like I would have ran into a game over condition if that happened. So
there was one time during the fight with Thor's sons, I can't remember their names, but he'd get grabbed periodically during that fight.
Yeah, a few times.
Yeah. His sons, Modi and Magni. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, any other thoughts about the gameplay or anything y'all want to add?
Yeah, I have one more quibble.
Quibble?
The camera was overall excellent. Like, it was great for the storytelling. It was nearly seamless, honestly. The one time the camera was really bad was during battle. Sometimes, not really bad. It was occasionally really bad. So like the camera did a good job of locking onto the enemy that you were kind of trying to fight.
Mm-hmm.
But I found that it was too thirsty. So sometimes I'm like, oh, I want to fight an enemy who's off in the corner. You know, I don't want to fight the big guy in the middle. Or I need to run for some health and just like run away from the fight for like 10 seconds. But I can't, because as soon as I start running, first of all, the camera would not respond to the right stick, or it wouldn't respond enough or at all or whatever.
Ooh.
And so I would not be oriented the way I thought I was going to be in that swift moment. But also, like, if I'm running right past an enemy, the camera would track the enemy sharply. And so I would suddenly be like zigzagging and I'm trying to correct, and then it follows me. So I'm overcorrecting and I'm like, what is going on? And it drove me crazy, and it felt like I was playing Kingdom Hearts 2. You know, and I'm like, at least Kingdom Hearts 2 had a button to untrack the enemies. But in this game, it's just silent. It's in the background. So that drove me crazy. I feel like that's something that should be easy to fix or just not do.
Yeah, I always toggled it off. Like the only time I had it on was when I was fighting a boss. Because
you could toggle the camera?
Yeah, by clicking
the lock on
R3, and it wouldn't lock on to enemies.
I had no idea.
Oh,
this is the first time I've heard
it. Well,
I was always locked on.
Does the game teach you that?
Yeah, it tells you, because I definitely wouldn't know. Yeah, it tells you at some point, like, oh, you can, like one of the little notes, it says like, oh, you can lock on the enemies.
That must be a detail that was lost because I had no idea.
Yeah,
I found it by mistake and never used it because of what Steve described. It always kind of contradicted what I actually wanted to do, especially if you were surrounded. You know, locking on to one didn't.
You don't know who it's going to lock onto. Yeah. Well, dang. I guess I can't complain too much. I'm just annoyed that I didn't. That should have been in one of the recurring tooltips or something.
You should be able to complain. It should at least, like, I like games that like periodically notify you again, like, hey, you could do this. You know, like, it just lets you know, or some kind of button for, I don't know. I just feel like you should have not gone through a whole game unawares of.
And even if you're locked on to account for the player's input, if he's trying to break line of sight, then you toggle off
that for
the game should toggle off. Yeah.
If I'm actively moving the right stick, it should listen to me.
Yeah.
Well, how they use that is to change enemies that you're looking at. So I guess they don't see that as this. You might be wanting to look at somebody far to your right that you're aware of, but you're not locked on. So that's probably why they don't do that. Yeah.
And I guess they weren't accounting for.
They shouldn't do that. I think if I want to move the stick, it should just unlock and follow me like normal. Because in the heat of battle, I wasn't thinking like, oh, let me see which enemy I'm going to lock onto next. I'm just going on muscle memory. I want the camera at this angle.
Yeah.
And I'm going to run, and I'm going to hope the camera's at that angle when I start running.
Yeah, I just think that in knowing games that use a similar mechanic, all of them do the same thing. You just use the right, look to change who you're viewed on. Like, that's like precedence. So I feel like they would have been breaking a game mechanic rule doing that. So speaking of like locking on and the conversation about that enemy who kind of taught you how to fight, I think where I enjoyed the game the most was any encounter with one enemy who was really strong, like who I could solely focus on and who I could just fight,
Because you could style on it.
Yeah, you could learn them, you could fight them. Like, it was, they could hit you brutally, they could kill you and all that. Like, that's why I enjoyed the Valkyrie fight, because even though like I didn't, first try kill the Valkyrie, I felt like, okay, I just need to be better. I need to figure out the movements. That's kind of a little bit of the Dark Souls and like what you call it?
Yeah.
The other game that I was trying to get you to play.
Bloodborne.
Bloodborne feels like that, but Bloodborne's a lot more brutal. But like, yeah, for that's like, to me, that has kept me thinking about the game. Oh, I want to fight the rest of the Valkyries, because I know in that fight it's gonna be 1-on-1. I'm going to be fighting them, learning. They're going to have cool moves, and I'm going to have to, like you said, try to style on them. Like, it'd be fun. But I really don't look forward to the fights where it's like 5 enemies and like of different types. And then whenever you add a long distance type enemy into a fight, I hate it. I will go out of my way to find you first and murder you. I will
absolutely
100%. Yeah. And I don't know, that's not extremely fun to me. So anyway, like one of my favorite things about the mechanics of fighting was anytime I fought a stronger enemy one-on-one. Those were my favorite experiences.
I actually feel like somewhere in between was good for me, because like fighting the big guys with the like giant logs, they were kind of like ogres, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, the trolls.
The trolls. I didn't particularly like those fights. I mean, I liked being able to throw my axe at their head, like you were saying, and just dink, and then they get staggered. That was always a fun like sight gag. But then the rest of my hits never really felt, I guess, crunchy enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so it's like I was just chipping away at something that wasn't responding to me very often, and so that didn't feel good. And one note about the Valkyries. So I did like most, if not most, of the side quests during my playthrough, and so one thing that I was getting to was going to the Valkyries, and I did 3 of them. And hopefully this isn't a spoiler, but to your point about fighting Valkyries one-on-one, that changes. And
yeah, one of them has friends.
Yeah, and so that's the reason why I stopped pursuing the Valkyries, is because one that I was fighting, first off, it was the strongest one so far, and it would constantly spawn enemies.
No.
And it was completely, it just wasn't fun. And I got to the point to where I got her down to like a 16th of HP. She'd spawn more dudes, and then they'd kill me. And I was like, nah, I guess I'm done.
Yeah. Oh.
That's when you get Atreus to shoot her with the arrows, man.
I don't think Atreus can fight with you in those fights.
He does, but she doesn't have, I don't think it was abilities or something, but for some reason, his arrows were like less effective. I don't remember why.
I feel like the first Valkyrie you can fight with them, or maybe I'm just wrong.
I'm trying to remember.
Because I remember you went.
I'm pretty sure.
You went into the chamber, and I thought you just went by yourself, and he told. But maybe I'm wrong. I mean, I haven't played it in a while, so.
I mean, I only went into 2 chambers, and I didn't kill either of them, but I think that he was there both times.
Yeah.
Maybe so.
I'll say this. If it was as simple as getting Atreus to just take off the last sliver of health, I would have totally done that. Because I did do that in a lot of the fights.
I'm messing with you.
Spam that boy.
Oh, yeah.
Who were your least favorite enemies to fight?
I think Kyle touched on the big dudes. They weren't my least favorite, but I agree with you in the sense that they were like the least fun to me. They were just like big and like just avoid getting hit and just hit their legs, and they didn't feel crunchy, like you said, or impactful. I think the ones that really annoyed me the most were the dark elves who could blind you, and then like you're blinded, and then you could get chained into blindness. Over, and you'd be stuck in that gray state. I think that to me, yeah.
And they spammed those red attacks. They had red lunging attacks that they would come through the blindness with.
So you had to just keep moving. Yeah. Keep moving. I don't know where they're coming from. Just keep moving.
And they spam that darkness attack too. That first boss, or the boss, whatever, the elf general. He would just do it like over and over, and I'd be like, I'm stuck here for like 3 minutes in darkness. This isn't fun.
And the problem is it was almost like a trap. So it's not that they hit you directly; it was that you ran into it while you were moving. So you could, would get out of the darkness and then immediately move into a new patch, and then be right back. It was I was in,
or like I would be hitting them. I'd be like comboing them, and they're like getting hit and like backing away. And then they drop 3 bombs, and I just happen to run into it because I'm approaching,
Yeah.
I'm already on your face. So, yeah, that irritated me. My other least favorite would be the Revenants, for sure.
Which ones are the Revenants?
They're those witches who cackle
and
throw poison and stuff. And you just can't hit them half the time.
You have to, get Atreus to shoot them first, and then hit them, and then they'll go into the state where you can't mess with them. And then, they're just... annoying.
I feel like they wouldn't have been as bad if the registration of hits was consistent, because Atreus would just, like, his arrows would just fly through them sometimes because I was standing too close. And so they were in that state to where they didn't want to get hit by me. And so it wouldn't register whenever an arrow hit them. And so then they'd hit me or something stupid. And the fights usually just felt broken.
Yeah.
More than anything.
Yeah, and they had like a seeking ground attack that was really slow. So you had to like wait for it to get to you before you dodged it or shielded.
So
they were annoying.
So what were your favorite enemies to fight? Like,
I don't know. Maybe I don't have a favorite.
I think I. So, go ahead, Kyle.
Oh, this is kind of contradictory, but my favorite boss, at least, was in the Realm of the Dead. The guy who was guarding the bridge.
The bridge troll or whatever.
Was it the bridge troll?
Yeah.
Yeah.
To give him the boy's soul.
Yeah, just because his was probably the most diverse fight that I remember, because he would teleport sometimes, and you had to dodge his shockwaves, and then you could also
send the slow projectiles.
Yeah, and to me that was just really fun.
Yeah,
that
was a good fight. I enjoyed it. There was a point where he got into this state where I couldn't hit him, where he kept teleporting in this weird pattern. Where anytime I tried to approach him, he'd just keep teleporting. And I was like, what's going on? Like, it was like a weird like AI state, but eventually he broke out of it. But it wasn't bad. It was just weird.
Oh, you know who looked fun to fight that I didn't really finish? Or oh, I know why I'm confused. So there's a dragon, one or two dragons I met that I wanted to free. And I didn't get a chance to, but I'm like, that would have been cool. The dragon you fight in the story.
That was epic.
Was a lot of fun.
That's a good fight.
Yeah, that was really cool. Like to me, that goes down to how well they what do you call it? Integrated like the cinematic moments and the gameplay. Like it felt so like the elevator and all this stuff. It was just crazy, and how it was moving across. It was just super cool. Like they did such a cool job with that. Actually, you just from
Baldur's fights were really
Baldur's
good.
Was crazy. Those fights were ridiculous. Like the whole game. Anytime you had a boss fight, it was so crazy cinematic. It was like, what in the world? I was gonna say this. There is an enemy type that I did dislike as well. It was the dudes, the ice dudes that you had to fight with your hands before you got the chains of.
Yeah, that sucked.
Yeah, it was just like annoying because it just felt like it slowed the gameplay down because I was like, I gotta put my thing away and punch you in the face and then slam your head into the ground. So I didn't like that.
I was already fighting barehanded a lot at that point, so I didn't really care that much. But what I didn't like was that if you had your axe for some reason and you swung, it would like bounce,
deflect,
and like stagger you a little bit. And I'm like, could you just not do damage? Like, I get it. It's supposed to be. They really wanted you to use your hands.
Yeah, that's 100% what it accomplished. That was when I started using my bare hands. Like,
don't want to do
that.
So
you weren't using your hands up to that point?
Well, I never. Well, I was like, why would I use my hands? Like, these enemies are gonna murder me
for stun,
and I can't block. Well, I can block them, but like, yeah, like to me, stun was just happened. Like, it wasn't like something I was trying to do. It's just hey, cool.
Oh, I guess that's another. I relied a lot on stun because with stun you could just instant KO a lot of enemies.
I will say this: after those dudes showed up, there was an enemy who I really annoyed me, and I would barehand them to stun them and kill them. But that was like just a particular. I can't remember what enemy it was. But yeah.
So I have a least favorite mob, I guess, and that would be the werewolves.
Oh, them dudes were terrible. Oh my, their movement and how hard they hit. And
everything about them was just broken.
I forgot about them dudes. Yo, those
and
sucked.
The distance of their attacks didn't make any sense.
Yeah, they were crazy. I forgot about them dudes.
And there would always be two of them.
Yeah,
and I would just turn the other direction because they were usually in places I didn't need to go. So when they were in places of importance, I was like,
not today.
Like legitimately.
You know what's funny? So I've been playing Witcher 3 and there's werewolves in it. And I've been trying to figure out why I'm always a little bit like, werewolves, like hesitant. But they're not, they're like, you got to fight them and they're like difficult. But I think it's because of God of War. Like, they're not too different in the sense of like what they kind of look like. And I just remember the first time I ran into him, I was like, oh man, this is going to be horrible. And I think it came from God of War. I forgot about the werewolves. I'm happy there wasn't many of them.
Yeah, they were a rare treat.
A treat. Yeah, I think my favorite enemy was any enemy that had nothing special. Like, it was just a normal dude who I was fighting. Because I felt like those were the dudes I could style on, have fun with, like try new things. Anybody who didn't have no weird elemental or distance attack, I enjoyed those enemies. Like humans.
So the travelers were good.
Oh, the travelers were cool, but they were.
The travelers were cool.
But
their armor was really annoying.
Yeah. At first.
Well, I'll say this. It was annoying, but once I learned how to deal with the armor, it wasn't that bad. It's just a different way to play.
Yeah, I never did many of the side quests. I only encountered, I think, 2 of them, maybe 3. 2 or 3.
Yeah, I met at least 6 or 7 travelers.
Yeah, they were all over the place.
Yeah, so, cause I don't know. I didn't really. Once again, I didn't enjoy the gameplay, so to me, I wasn't trying to go out of my way to fight anybody. So we talk a lot about the gameplay, but we gotta talk about the story. We got to talk about the story. We gotta. So okay. I would love to hear you guys feel about the story in general. I'm gonna give my take straight out the gate. I honestly think that this is one of my favorite stories in the video game. I don't know, in the last decade or more. Like, I think, like, for me, Halo is always one of those games that stood out to me. I enjoyed the narrative. Mass Effect, I really enjoyed the narrative. I mean, it was clear that that's what they was going for. And then God of War, I just think the way that they told the story, the progression of all the different characters throughout the game, particularly, Kratos and, of course, Atreus, who you find out later, Loki, and then even like little minor characters like Brock and Sindri, their characters, and like just all these little, like, and the thing is, what I really enjoyed is that they were like, we're gonna keep our cast pretty small, but they're gonna be a strong cast.
Meaningful,
really well fleshed out.
Very well fleshed out. Very
even Baldur
felt. I like Baldur's kind of his accent and his tonality. Like, there's something about how he spoke that I really liked. But yeah, I think to me what stood out was the characters and their progression throughout the game, and feeling like the characters were deeper than just their quote unquote bio, right? Like,
for sure.
Like, even we'll talk about Atreus, but like just his arc through the game, like when you finally reveal that he's a god and how he acts about that is just
he flies off the handle.
To me, it was just super cool. So, what do you guys think about the story overall?
So,
yeah, I was deeply invested.
You can go ahead if you want. Elaborate.
Okay. Yeah, I was deeply invested. I love the characters. None of the twists really surprised me that much, but the way that things played out was always so dramatic and epic. I was like, I don't care that I wasn't like taken aback by this. Of course, the drama with Atreus learning he's a god and kind of going nuts. I loved the relationship between him and his dad. There were points of the story where I wanted to like stop and talk to him. Like, you can talk to Brock and Sindri sometimes, but you can't do anything to further the relationship except play the game.
Yeah.
There was a moment where Kratos goes into the light of Alfheim and he has like a vision. It takes a few minutes, but when he comes out, you learn that he's been gone for like, what was it, hours or days or something? Like, it was a long time.
They don't say directly.
Yeah, some extent.
And Atreus is furious with him for leaving him for that long. And I wanted to be like, I was mad because I'm like, dude, why can't I tell him this one fact that would make it okay, which is I didn't know it was that long. It wasn't my fault. Didn't mean to leave you here, son. And then a few rooms later, after they have some other interaction, I think Kratos is like, I just want you to know that this was, this is what happened. And he was like, okay, that makes you feel better. And I'm like, yes, that was satisfying. That was really cool. the conversations with Balder and Freya,
Mm-hmm.
even how Freya reacts to like, you know, you killing Balder at the end.
Oh man,
it was like
she just go.
Everything was just pitch perfect. I was just astounded the whole time.
Yeah. Yeah, to me, the story was super strong, but more so the delivery. Like, a lot of times when you're playing a game with a deep story, they try not to. The ones that do try not to make most of the story beats happen in cutscenes and like in between the fights and stuff. You'll watch the story play out. But to me, I never felt like what I was doing was disconnected from the overarching story. Like, even down to making the hub world, you know, and using, which I thought was brilliant, having the water level change to reveal new places to go, and how they were just interweaving every piece of things. If a character was revealed, it was because they weren't going to be used as a plot device necessarily, but because they were important to the final goal. And it was just like everybody felt like they were intended to be part of the story. And like you guys were saying, you felt invested when you found out more about these characters. And it's like you weren't necessarily, you were like, it was this tug of war. Like you were itching to find out more about these characters. And then the game or the story would just deliver and it would give you more and they would grow. But it'd be dispersed to where, you know, it was like, it was a meal. Like this game was a meal, man.
Yeah.
And so, you know, there'd be bits of dialogue while you're rowing in the boat, like we were saying, that would sometimes get cut off, but other times you'd have to go really far. So they plan for that, and you get this big chunk of not exposition, but Kratos and Atreus and Mimir.
Lore,
yeah. They'd have a full-fledged conversation, and you'd feel like, oh, they're learning this at the same time I am, versus, oh, remember that time when, and like they're retelling something that everybody knows except the player, and you feel disconnected.
Yeah, I think.
And so.
Yeah. What were you going to say? Sorry.
I was going to say, yeah, so I felt really grounded in the world, which made me care about the story they were telling.
Yeah. I think one of the things that really stood out to me, and I don't know how many movies or TV shows or anything can pull this off strongly. I feel like Avatar did it well with Toph, bringing in a new character later, but making them feel like they were with you the whole time. Like, is Mimir, when he joins, like, he's just this talking head of knowledge. That's literally what he is. Like, he is the, like, god of knowledge or something like that. And when he joins the story, just how he fills the gaps in of, like, the things that you need to know, but also pushes the story along with that father-son dynamic. In his kind of, like, sympathetic, like, hey, man, Kratos, you need to talk to your son, dude. Like, you know, like him kind of having these like sidebars and him kind of being this, I would say voice of reason in certain moments, but also being like, you know, his own little goofy self saying stupid things, but like also being this like lore genius, like him telling these stories of like who the giants were and who this character was. But like you said, it happened in a really cool and immersive way as you're going through this river and seeing the scenery change and entering a new place. And I mean, and then the way that the dialogue was delivered, like you said, was so powerful. Like I honestly felt like Atreus was a little like a kid who was discovering the world and was trying to understand. He's a little abrasive and like would ask these questions that are kind of inappropriate, you know, at times, you know, but it really felt like Atreus is just that kind of guy. Like, he's just like, hey, why are you doing that? What's going on? And his little quips throughout the fights and in between rooms. And like, they just did such a great job of making you feel like the whole experience was the story. Not just, like you said, the story beats. Fight a battle, story. Fight a battle, story. It felt like they would comment about what just happened, you know? But it would kind of still build the story and the relationships, you know? It was so good. It was so good.
Yeah, I mean, Atreus was so likable, and then he becomes so unlikable. Like I felt invested in that change. And I was even talking to Keisha, you know, I'm like, this kid's a little turd. You know, he's out here talking trash to people and getting into fights, and I'm like, you know, I gotta spank this kid. And then he, you know, the repentance at the end. Mimir was charming. Even Kratos. So Kratos is like on the surface a very unlikable person, but you could feel from his tone and from his, the facial expressions he made, and when even when he chose not to say anything, that like he's gruff and he's stern and he's very careful, but there's more to it, I guess. He's also lacks trust in people and so on and so forth. But it's because of all the pain that he's hiding. It's because of all the things that he's seen and experienced. It's because he knows about the world that can be dangerous. Like, it's very sympathetic, And I didn't know much about his past because I haven't played the other games. But I'm like, I know he killed a lot of people, a lot of gods, and got into lots of fights. I'm like, okay, it makes sense to me that he knows, or that he's nervous around other gods, and that he has a past that he's trying to hide. And so even though I'm rooting for him to like be open and do the right thing and act this way and act that way, like I totally get it. I totally understand like how and why he acts the way he does.
Yeah. And he's trying to control himself, keep it all bottled in, because also, his motive was to hide who he really was from Atreus this whole time. And if he's always around, you can't let it slip even once,
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think I was gonna say, I think it's interesting that like his character and how, like, one of the moments that moved me the most was early in the game when Atreus, hunts that deer or whatever.
The boar?
No, the deer. The very first like narrative beats. Right?
Yeah.
And first of all, that deer was gangster looking. And like he hits the target and they're going for the, hey, you need to kill the deer. And then Kratos, like, to me, I was like, Kratos is gruff. He's like, wants to raise his son to be prepared for a harsh world. But you can also see the love he has for him, but he's kind of actively holding back. And so, for me, in the moment when Atreus was afraid to kill the deer, my thought was, okay, Kratos is annoyed with this little kid. He's just going to take the sword and kill it himself, right? No, he puts his hand with Atreus and they do it together. Right? And then he like says something, and then Atreus is kind of in that moment feeling that death, and they do such a beautiful shot of like Kratos sitting behind him, and you see him wanting to put his hand on the back of his head, right? And then he like hesitates,
but he pulls back.
Then he grabs the knife, and then later, like hours later in the game, you keep having these moments happen. And then they're standing like on a mountain somewhere looking over. They've accomplished something. And Kratos is standing in almost that same exact position. And you see him lift his hand again. And I was like, oh, is he going to do it this time? And he does it. And he puts his hand on his head. And I felt it. I was like, bro, like Kratos is growing. Like he's these experiences, he's bonding with his son. He sees he needs to be a better father. He doesn't know how to be. And he's just... And it to me, it was just like this really beautiful tale of, son. And of course, that was the narrative, but they did such a great job with that.
For me, well, you know what? I'll also say this is kind of refreshing. I don't know. I feel like I don't usually see stories just about like fatherhood and, the father-son relationship. So that's nice. For me, I saw the hand. That was cool. But what really got to me was the transition from calling him boy to Atreus. And then, like, I think it was right at the end of the game. Like, when they get to Jotunheim, he calls him son.
Yeah, that was the first time.
And I was like, oh!
The payoff. Weeping. That payoff.
Yeah, it was such a good payoff.
Very good.
Yeah.
Yeah, the visual element, which is tough in a game where you can control the camera. Like, even when somebody's talking to you, you can walk around and stuff. But the details they decided to put in that you would see rather than people wouldn't say things, like going back to Atreus just being a kid. I remember when I first got to it was in Midgard where the giant had fallen, so the cold area. You go there and Atreus starts ice skating.
Oh yeah, he's sliding around and goofing around. Yeah.
And I'm like,
I don't remember that.
And like they mocapped this, like they wanted him to seem like a kid, and he's like, and it's nothing, and it's not like, I'm gonna go be a kid now, and like no, it's just he just goes and does something.
Yes,
and it's just like that is a moment that I could have missed, right? Because it's just happening. And there was a chest nearby, and there was other puzzles and stuff I could mess with. And like this wasn't part of a cutscene where it's like the camera's panning and watching Atreus do this. It's like no, Atreus is with me on this journey, but he's his own person doing what he wants to do. Yeah. And then another sight gag that was really funny to me was with the dwarves, you know, how they would continuously talk things up and make these big to-dos, but then everything came down to dwarven magic being how they were accomplishing things. And then whenever you would upgrade the Leviathan axe, you would hand him to him and he'd be like, oh man, this thing is in terrible shape. I need to fix it. And he'd hit it once with his hammer and then hand it back to you and be like, I'm done.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man.
I remember he'd like take it. He's like, yeah, this thing is terrible. Yeah, clink.
Right.
And he'd be like, it's better now. Yeah.
I couldn't decide whether that was a, you know, something they had to do for the sake of gameplay. Like, we can't show him actually smithing this axe. Or if it was supposed to be taken like, this is the real world, you know, reality. He literally just hit it one time. Like, I didn't know. I try not to think
there
too
was
much
a moment, you know, at the end when Sindri and Brock come together and they're doing the last things, where they kind of show them do a little bit more. So I do feel like that's like honestly how they do it. Like they just go and they click it a little bit and then he hits it and then he looks at it and they, you know, like it's very, you know, at least when it's magical, you know. And I definitely feel that like something they did really well was like Atreus, just even how he moved around the world. Yes, I specifically remember him sliding across the ice and thinking like, yo, if I was a kid, I would do the same thing. Because it's like, this is so cool. Like, I'm traveling the world and I'm doing stuff. And like, you know, Atreus is capable, right? Like, he can fight. I mean, that moment you were talking about, Steve, where, you know, Kratos goes into the light, the light of Niflheim or whatever it was called. Alfheim. Yeah. And he's trapped in there and he doesn't really know how much time passed. He comes back and Atreus is by himself and there's bodies everywhere.
Bodies.
And you're like, yo,
gangster.
You at that point he was a man. He's
legitimately.
Like, and he was like, where were you? You didn't come back. And then like, because Kratos in that moment tries to say, I don't know what was happening, only a little bit of time. He's like, you do this all the time. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's not a kid he's an emotional, and he's like he sees his dad as like this person who's withholding things from him and not being, you know, he sees it and he senses it. So he like, you get this like a lot of emotional outbursts, but at the same time, he's this goofy little kid asking little questions and just saying things he shouldn't say. Like they just did such a good job with him from a writing and even just point to point.
I'm kind of nervous about how he's going to turn out in Ragnarok, because he's a teenager now.
Yeah, I think it's kind of interesting because, you know, going back to him finding out like this whole narrative of Kratos not wanting to reveal that he's a god. Also having this mistrust of gods and not trying to explain to Atreus because he doesn't think Atreus is old enough, can understand it, and doesn't want him to have that burden. And then like when he tells Atreus and Atreus becomes this like, he's like, why are you guys always complaining about these stupid things? We're gods. Right. We don't have time for this trivial stuff, you know?
Yeah.
And then him even like when he kills what's his name, Modi or whatever, or the other brother.
Yeah, the other
like
brother.
I feel like we just saw a glimpse into who he's gonna become. Like that's the part of him that like
that's the Kratos in him.
Exactly. And I feel like that's the part that, you know, his mom, I guess Faye or whatever, she kind of put that like gentle, loving kind of side into him, but that anger, emotional, prideful side is Kratos, and he's spending a lot of time with his dad. and as people say, your kids become like the worst of you. Like they really show the worst of you sometimes. Like what kind of your character, and I really feel like that's going to show in the next game, you know, that kind of part of him. And him
it seemed like he battled through a lot of it. It seemed like he battled through a lot of it in this game. And Kratos, it seemed like he was being intentional about trying to steer Atreus from that path even before Atreus knew, and it's just like controlling yourself and being better and stuff was always the mantra.
But it used to be about controlling his fear, I think, and his uncertainty.
Yeah.
But then suddenly it was like, actually, you need to learn to control your anger.
Your rage. Yeah.
But I feel like deep down, Kratos always knew it was an anger thing. Like, he knew that his son was going to be like him, so he was trying his best to keep him away.
Actually, you're right. I think he specifically said anger near the beginning of the game. You're right.
And then when...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because when the troll attacks and steals the deer... And they fight him, and then they kill him, and then Atreus jumps on his face, yo, blah, 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 and it's slashing him.
Yeah,
I remember.
Like Kratos is like, hey, bro,
you're not ready.
like,
yeah, you gotta chill
out. Not ready. Just the way he said it, like done. And then Atreus is like, wait, no, I am. He's like, and they did a great job of writing where they didn't like, I'm very sick and I have some weird sickness. And he just kind of was like, it hasn't happened in a long time. And you're like, what is he talking about? And later it comes to fruition what he's talking about. So it's like, I don't know. Kratos just was really afraid that his son is gonna be him, and he knows that he's at least a demigod. But he's half giant, half god, which is maybe even more problematic.
So like quarter giant, half god, and quarter mortal.
I guess.
Yeah, because Kratos is a demigod.
Well, I think Kratos became a full god.
Oh, okay, sure. But by blood, he's a demigod, I guess.
Yeah. But the giants are mortal. They're not gods. They're just giants. So he got some, who knows?
Was anyone else really disappointed when he got to Jotunheim and it was empty? I thought there'd be like an epic ending. You like meet people. I didn't think you'd be fighting, but I thought there'd be like, a community there that you have to help, or that maybe they don't want you around or something. You have to talk to them, but there was just nobody.
For me,
yeah. Go ahead.
For me, I would say I kind of did, but I was kind of conflicted because up to that point, like the end game to me is really dense. There's a lot going on, and so I was conflicted because I was like, okay, I'm going up all these steps. This is the place I've been trying to get to for the last 35 hours. I kind of don't want anybody to be up there that I have to fight, but I would understand if there was like a big bad, like game trope. And so I was relieved, sort of, that there wasn't. But then at the same time, to make it to the edge of the mountain, you walk outside and you see that everyone's just deceased. All the giants are dead. Kind of filled that gap for me. It's like I'm not wondering where they are, but I also didn't interact with them directly. So I'm good with this.
Yeah, I had a feeling early in the game, right around when they meet the serpent, the world serpent, who's a giant, and they're talking about all these other giants and how they were killed by like Thor and this thing and that thing, that the giant, and the fact that the giant realm was like sealed off, that something really bad had happened. Like I was like, there's a good chance that, like, I didn't think we were going to go to Jotunheim, but as the game progressed, I was like, oh, they're going to go to Jotunheim and realize like everything is bad. Like there's no safe place. That's kind of what I was like, because they kept on like, yeah, the tallest mountain in Jotunheim, and that's where mom's from, and blah, blah, blah. Like I was like, there's something like waiting for them that they're not going to like. That's kind of what I felt. And I felt that it was going to be kind of like a Samus when she goes to like in, what's called, the one with the dark and light world, like where it's just
Echoes,
where it's like
Metroid Prime 2 Echoes.
Yeah, I had a feeling that there might be like one giant left outside of the serpent beast, but like that, because the fact that they hadn't heard about the giants, that the giants used to like traverse in the world, and it's been hundreds of years or X amount of years, I was like, something is up. And Odin is like, who knows what Odin is up to? You know what I'm saying?
Right, yeah.
So then the fact that they had sealed, like, I just felt like there was some really bad thing that had happened and they were going to walk into it. I figured that like they probably wouldn't interact with any giants in this story, at least. Excuse me. In any like meaningful way. So I wasn't surprised. I felt there was going to be some kind of cliffhanger, like, especially since Jotunheim was at the end of the journey. I was like, oh, like, we're going to learn something that'll tell us in the next game. You know what I'm saying? Like, even though I wasn't aware there was a second game, I figured there's something more, or something.
And they kind of did allude to that with the murals.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Thank you. That's actually I meant to mention that earlier. I really loved looking at the murals because you
at the end of the game or
throughout the game that Atreus had to translate and like tell you what was happening, and then I'd go into the menu and read what it said, but it kind of still left things a little bit like, what's going on? Like, why are the people used to like worship the giants and now they're all gone? You know what I'm saying? And they all died,
killed.
Yeah. So it told me that the giants were probably in bad shape.
I just thought it was tragic.
It was.
So speaking of the world building, I remember being super confused for the first like couple hours because they were talking about the Aesir and the Vanir and all these different realms. But then by the end of it, I had a handle on all the names and all the realms. And I was like, this is great. Like, I learned a lot about Norse mythology just from playing this game.
Legitimately.
And it was a really great onboarder. Like, I knew the vague relationships. I had never heard of Modi and Magni before, but like, I had heard the name Baldur. I know Thor.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I guess at the very least, we know enough from like Marvel to know who like Freya is. But yeah, I was like, I learned a lot. I know all these different. I don't know what the like conceptual difference is between the Vanir and the Aesir, but I just know they're different classes of gods, basically, or different families, perhaps.
Yeah, I still don't get that. I think I agree with you. I would say that maybe I'm still not as clear as you are at the end. It felt like the Vanir were just like gods who use nature power. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, like gods who use magic, basically.
Yeah, and then versus like Odin and them who kind of just use, I don't know, universe juice.
They don't use magic.
Yeah, they're like more of a, like, I don't know, modern gods, if that makes any sense. Yeah, to me, it's still a little confusing to me because like the Bifrost, I know it's like how you travel between worlds. And I'm like, so these worlds are on top of each other, but they're not. And like, how do they intersect? But how do they know about each other? Who made the Bifrost? I'm still very confused by it. But to me, that was interesting. I like anything where it's like, what is going on? Like, there's a lot going on here. Like, how do these worlds, like, I still don't understand how they really intersect, or do.
They're just, it's a multiverse, man.
It's a multiverse. That's the.
You know what I'm confused by? How does Midgard and the rest of the realms intersect with Sparta and Greece?
So that's the.
For Kratos to get there?
How did he get there? That's all.
How did he get there? And like, are they? Why if are the 9 realms? Do they not include Greece? Like, is there a Grecian version of Niflheim or Helheim or anything? Like, why do Hades and Helheim not intersect or interact? Like, what is the deal?
They do kind of gloss over that.
There's definitely a note that Odin is aware of who Kratos is, kind of. Like, and so
Mimir was aware.
So there's, to me, there's a likelihood that Midgard is essentially just Earth, the realm that is Earth, and like Kratos just lived in a different part of Midgard, right? Like somewhere else.
I should clarify, it is Midgard with a D at the end. It's not Midgar, like from Final Fantasy.
Yeah, so like Midgard, like overall, he just lives somewhere else on Earth, right? Like Sparta is somewhere else. And like this particular area seems to be like just the connection point between the multiverses versus it being a different realm, like, and then gods kind of exist in their particular areas, I don't know. It's hard to know.
I guess it.
Well, because
it just feels like the world. I mean, it's kind of the problem that comic books have now when they're trying to introduce all these different pantheons, and the question would be, how do they interact? And the answer is usually they don't often. They kind of have their own rules, but I guess it's the exact same problem and the exact same solution, which is we just don't talk about how they interact.
But there was that.
Yeah, there's a book that precedes the game, and it pretty much just says that Kratos just like travels to different places.
Yeah, he just left. He sailed, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But since they don't explicitly say how he gets there, I kind of felt like maybe. Also, the moment when he's going back home to get the blades, I didn't understand what was happening. I thought he intended to go all the way back to Greece to get something. And I was like, oh, snap. Are we going to see like what he did in Greece? But then he just goes to the house. I'm like, oh, okay, that's still pretty epic. Oh my God. Can we talk about that?
Please.
That whole set piece where he's sailing back home.
Wait, before we talk about that, I just want to one more thing about the whole how did he get there? I think one thing that did Tyr in his little chamber, he had stuff from all over the world, and
he had Egyptian
and all different stuff. And then there's that moment where Kratos goes, "Oh, this is like," or Mimir says, "Oh, this is from your homeland," or something like that. I can't remember. One of them said it.
Oh, the wine. Yeah.
So to me, that made it clear that they were in the same world. It's just that Tyr was a traveler, and he would go places and do things within Midgard, and that just happened to be one of the areas. So I was just going to say that. But yeah, so anyway, back to what you're saying, Steve.
Yes. So that was just so epic because you know that your kid is sick, you got to hurry. But you also know that like you are uncovering a deep, deep hurt and like, not just hurt, but like shame that Kratos has.
Mm-hmm.
And the music and like, I think the camera kind of came in and the lighting changed. And just all of it was so epic. And I've never played the games, right? Again, like I know about the blades just from like having seen some pictures and some video, but when he dug into his house in that little basement area and he pulled out those blades and he slowly uncovered them, and I was like swearing. I was like, this is so cool. This is so epic. I have no involvement with this story, but the presentation is so good that I'm like fully committed to how epic this is. And then when you first equip them and you start using them, I was like squealing. And I'm like, there's no reason for, like, I'm not nostalgic. There's no reason for me to feel like this is so epic, but now. It was just so cool. So that was really well done. I was super into it.
And I think the fact that the way that they built it up was, you find out that he's sick because of what, you as Kratos has been doing this whole time. And like you were saying, that the opportunity to revel, like I think a lot of medias, even movies, would have kind of skipped over it because that segment was so long. That boat ride is so slow. And like you really feel the weight each moment. Like they didn't show it in a cutscene. Like you're actually like driving the boat for minutes, just thinking about what if I don't make it back in time and your son dies? He's sick because of you. All these different, really deep emotional thoughts, and then you have the hallucination with, was it Athena?
Yeah,
and it was just, and it's like when I was going through it, I was like, man, this is a really long segment. But then when you go through the whole thing and everything takes place, it's like, oh, that was super intentional and well thought out. Like they wanted you to feel the weight of that moment. And I'm glad they left it in like they did.
That series of moments to me made me think to myself that truly the future of storytelling, cinematography, and all this stuff really could be within immersive, interactive mediums, aka video games. Mm-hmm. Because there's no way you could convey that feeling in a movie theater or in a book or in a comic book. I feel like you had to play it to really feel like and go through that long, like, it's like you said, in a movie, like they would have cut that whole scene. They would have just cut to him being at the cabin, like getting the thing and then playing the music and then cut back.
Yeah, looking sad.
Cut. That's like 7 minutes of your 140 minutes.
Exactly. But they built it so much, and you the weather is like changing, and the lighting is changing progressively as he's walking toward, like you said, his shame, his like bury. And I thought it was so interesting that they put where he buried it is the same place that he told Atreus to hide when Baldur came. Like he's like, hey, this is a safe place. Like this is where things that, don't need to be found are, right? And he goes back into that hole. He looks at it and just, man, that deep, like, choral, whatever they do, that kind of like, oh, whatever that was.
Yeah.
Dude,
Yeah.
I feel it every time. And and they don't overuse it throughout the game. They only use it at those really pivotal moments where it's like, oh, it's the Kratos. It's Kratos, the Kratos we knew. You know what I'm saying? Like, that anger is coming back. That viciousness that he tried to leave. Man, it's like you said, Steve, I didn't really play the games, but I felt like I had played the games and I knew, like, this was like that moment of like, oh, Master Chief putting the helmet on. Like,
the moment, it reminds me of the moment from John Wick when he's like digging up the cement, the guns and stuff in his basement and the gold coins.
Oh, he's returning back to his old life.
He's returning to his old self. It's like the analogous moment, but this was just so much better. Like, it was leagues better. There's no comparison.
Yeah, you couldn't do it in a movie. You need 5 or 6 movies to build that much. Like, because it's also, like you said, Kratos knowing that he is the direct result of his son's sickness and him hiding the truth, but knowing that unleashing the truth, he may never be able to go back. Like, he tried to get away from it, and there's that fear that, like, I could be my old self. And Athena being in ghost form is like a callback to the old games, because I, looked up some of the narrative and the story, and like Athena would travel along with him after he killed her, kind of on accident, and it's kind of one of his shames. So like it all comes together, right?
That makes
like
sense.
It's like Athena comes, like that mental illness, that thing that he hid, is like now all the demons are coming out. He was on medication and now he has to throw it away, like, and he's dealing with it. It's crazy. It's really crazy.
So good.
So, I want to ask a few things. I know we're kind of toward the end here. I want to ask you guys, did y'all see that giant demon bird in wherever in Helheim? That was just on the other side of the bridge.
Yep.
I was like, what I love about it is that they didn't even like say anything about it. It was just like,
right,
it just said, "Don't go over there.
Don't go over there." And I trust them. like
you right.
I think he showed up again when you're escaping Helheim with the ship.
But you.
I was so busy I couldn't really take a look at it.
That ship sequence was crazy.
Woo.
Yeah, that was pretty wild.
And I just thought, like, in any game, if you have such a cool, crazy, menacing creature like that, you'd bring them into the game. But they're just like, nope, this is something that, like, you don't even want to, like, it's, like, I feel like it's so cool to me that they have some really cool element that they're like, no, like, this isn't a part of the narrative. And I know you're interested in what that is. And I know you want to see more about that. But we're not going to do that because, like, I don't know. I really thought that was cool.
Oh,
personally.
Speaking of doing things you're not supposed to do. So when you first get the travel stone, and Brock says, whatever you do, don't go off the path.
Mm-hmm.
Did you go off? Did you jump off the road in the realm between realms?
I did not.
I did not. I think I tried. Did it stop me? I don't remember. No, I don't think I did. Did you?
I did. Immediately. Yes. And so it's very anticlimactic because later in the game, you're supposed to jump off and it brings you to, but if you do it beforehand, so you're looking over the edge and Kratos is like, we're going to jump. And Atreus is like, I don't think that's a really good idea. And he's like, boy. And so then Atreus jumps on his back and they just jump off and they're both just yelling for their lives and they dissolve into nothing and you get a game over.
Well, hilarious.
I mean, that's fair. Yeah.
Yes.
That's about what I expected.
I love that they did that. For some reason, I just assumed that they were just gonna invisible wall you. So I didn't even. I feel like I walked over to the edge or something, and I was like, "Oh, I guess I can't do this," and kept moving. That's kind of cool.
I was glad.
I wish they had made you fall for like 5 minutes or something, and then dissolved you.
You do fall for a couple of seconds. Like you get to see the error of your ways. you never want to do it again.
Mm. So one thing that we didn't talk about was just, I think the World Serpent was so cool to me. Just the design, his guttural, like just
his voice,
his talking, him being this menacing creature, but kind of being like this nice guy. like when
he just happened to be big.
He just happened to be a big friendly fellow. But I just love how when he first gets revealed and just being like, bro, that thing is so big. He just felt like a giant, And I don't know, something about this game, they did a really good job of scale. Like feeling like some things were really big, some things were small, things were, I really loved how they approached it. So okay.
Is it possible for the snake, the World Serpent, to get to Jotunheim? I feel like it would be too big.
I don't know. Was he hiding from Odin or something?
No, he was just chilling.
He was asleep underwater.
Yeah.
And now he's awake and just chilling. He's like as big as mountains, just just chilling over there now. Like.
I mean, Balder busted him up a little bit, but I don't think he actually has anything to worry about because if he can fight Thor and not
die,
he's probably
probably pretty strong. Because Thor was clearly a menace in this universe. Like he was truly just killing everybody. Like no impunity. So speaking of Thor, I missed this. I didn't, because today, as I was just doing getting ready for this, because I was like, man, I didn't play the game. Let me just do a quick story synopsis. So I looked at a story synopsis from the first 3 games, and then I watched the story synopsis of this game, and pretty much I remembered most things, but I didn't realize I missed the post-credit scene in the game. Did you guys play the post-credit scene?
Yeah, I did.
I think so.
Where they go to sleep?
It was really short. Yeah.
Where they
wake up in a thunderstorm.
They go to sleep?
Yeah. So I didn't play it. So just kind of the layout, what happened is essentially like they get back to the house, right? And, Kratos is like, all right, boy, what, son? We need to go to
time to rest.
Yeah. First of all, I don't know when he took Mimir off his back.
He didn't.
So I was like, Mimir just smashed under Kratos. And then it says like a few years later or something like that, which was confusing to me. And then it shows like them sleeping and then like thunderstorm happening, them waking up, Kratos grabbing the axe, the Leviathan axe. And first of all, Atreus looks exactly the same. So that was confusing. They walk outside and there's a hooded figure standing in their yard. Like just a big hooded figure standing there. And you can't see their face. You can't see anything. And then I think Kratos goes, "Who are you?" or something like that. Or no, he's
yeah.
And then he says, "Are you a nice, gentle guy?" or something like that.
Oh, you seem like a reasonable guy,
like,
or something.
"Are you a reasonable person?" or something like that. And then it shows him reveal Thor's hammer.
Yeah, the camera.
And you
hands behind him.
And then you.
Are you sure? I thought this was part of the trailer for the new game. I've seen that clip.
It was.
Yeah, it's at the end of the game.
It's also in the trailer for the new game as well. So I think they assumed some people might have missed it or something. And then it cut. Like it does a weird cut. Like it seems like they did this in the last days of the development because of nothing. It felt very different from how they do everything else. It just kind of cut, and it says back to today or something in present time, and then like they're standing there or something, and then Atreus goes, "Man, I had a weird dream," or something like that, and then he's like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Oh, it felt really real. Like there's a guy outside our door or something," and then like Kratos was like, "Don't worry about it, boy. We have other things to worry about now."
Right.
And then
back to the game.
And then it's back to the
He said to his son, who apparently has visions
of the future. Exactly. So it was weird for them to say few years later and then back to today and then making it seem like it was a dream, but it wasn't a dream. It was actually it was kind of a weird.
It was a vision.
Yeah. It was kind of weird. It could have just not said a few years in the future. They could have just made it a dream sequence seemingly. But yeah, so I don't know. I'm hype about the new game. honestly. I think, real talk, this might be one of the few games that I might buy early on in its release cycle.
Are you going to pre-order it?
Absolutely not.
Pre-order?
But I will.
Digital pre-order?
I'll probably buy a physical copy at full price when it drops. So that's how interested I am in the story. Like, to be honest, I'm not really looking forward to the hard fights again, but I'm really interested in the story and where they go. And I rewatched the trailer today and I was like, I'm still hype about this. Let's go.
This is one of those games that could move to the top of the I gotta play list.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's how it feels to me. Like, I think whatever I'm playing at the time will probably take a backseat. You know?
Yeah.
What about you, Steve? You feel like you're hype about this next one, or?
So, I look forward to it. I'm not hyped, but now that I think of it, I don't really have a reason not to be hyped. I mean, you're right. It's probably going to be excellent. I just want to see how it goes. Mm-hmm. I think maybe my lack of hype comes from just a general wariness of overburdening myself with
games.
You know, with big, expensive, deep games.
And they set the bar.
But yeah, this might. I think it's also because I haven't been a long time fan of the game. I only recently played it, and so like, you know, if it was something like Half-Life 3, I'd be really hyped. But you know,
well, that's releasing right after.
Or Metroid Prime. Like, DLC. I was super hyped for Metroid Dread, and that's like going to be half the game. This is.
It's going to be half the game. You're just half the game.
You'll be lucky if you're half the man I am.
Yeah, I think going back and watching the trailer after playing the game, because I think I saw the trailer maybe before I finished the game.
I did.
So
yeah.
it didn't really resonate to me, but I watched it again today, and like all the characters, knowing what was going on, and like seeing, because I was so confused who everybody was. And then realizing the big giant guy was Tyr. And I was like, oh, that's Tyr. You know, like it hit so much harder now, like seeing it again.
I am a little bummed because that would have been a much bigger reveal if I had played the game. But as it was, I had no idea who it was. And then when they mentioned Tyr, I'm like, oh, we're supposed to think he's dead, but we definitely saw him in the trailer. That's kind of a bummer.
Yeah, luckily for me, I did not even connect that. So, you know, throughout the game. And then I was confused about people saying Thor was fat. And then I realized when you watch the trailer again, if you pause it, you see Thor's fingers. And them boys is...
Oh, yeah, he does have chubby fingers.
He's in the cloak. He's wide in that cloak. Mm-hmm. So they're just making assumptions, too.
Yeah, I just thought he was swole. But them fingers is thick. Go, if you ever see...
But they did reveal his character model, too.
Oh, they did? Oh, I haven't seen that. Interesting.
I feel like Thor is going to be
a
real problem.
Oh.
He's going to be I think you're going to be dealing with Freya. We didn't talk much about Freya, but she definitely wants to kill you now.
Yeah,
so she's going to be after you, but I think Thor is going to be much smarter than Baldur and his two sons.
Mm-hmm. And where's Thor been during this whole experience of what you're doing? You know?
Yeah, I don't know.
He's clearly somewhere else. Like, where's Odin?
His son's nowhere.
Well,
because Modi went to him right after you killed his brother, and Thor supposedly beat him up.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, so he's around.
Well, there's this weird thing where I'm like, what is this realm that they exist in? Do they exist in another realm? Because they're not in Midgar.
They exist. They're in Valheim, I think.
Okay.
That was the realm that is closed off. I thought it was really funny. They were basically like, when you're on the table and you're looking at the different realms, it's like, oh, there's no travel tower. Oh, you don't have the runes. And this one just says, Odin has locked this realm. There's no way for you to get there.
Asgard was like that too.
Mm-hmm.
This is not part of this game.
Yeah, they're like, no, DLC. But I guess they can travel freely because they have the ability or something like that.
Yeah, I guess.
I don't know, except for they can't go to Jotunheim. So, I think I'm interested to see Thor's interaction. I mean, the fact that you probably interact with Thor early in the game, right? Probably, and then Thor does something and then says peace, and then you're like, yo, we need to go get what's his name? tier tells me that, like, to me, the fact that they have shown all these characters tells me that the story is going to be wild. Because it's like you're showing me the heavy hitters early, like, and then I'm like, okay, you have something you're hiding. Something in the story is going to be different. Like, they didn't show Odin, you know? No. So I wonder if we'll see Odin.
I mean, the side content in this game was crazy. Like, you had the sunken captains that you had to go find stuff for. All these hidden caves that you had to get keys for. Like, there was just so much stuff in the world. So, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they just packed this game to
the absolute brim. Oh, man. It's gonna be fire. So, there's so much more to say, but it's definitely time for us to wrap up this episode.
Yeah, I feel that.
I do have a closing remark, though, I want to make. One of my gripes about the game.
If you must.
It has to do with Freya. And so, to me, the way you end the game, or I guess beat the final one of the final bosses, is because of what Freya does early in the game, which felt random to me, which is whenever you go to her little house in the turtle, which I really love that whole area, she gives Atreus mistletoe. No. She takes the mistletoe, but so the thing I'm saying is him getting the mistletoe arrows was random to me. He got them from, what's his name? Caesar?
Sindri. I think he got them from Sindri.
Sindri. Yeah. Him getting those arrows. Did I miss something?
So actually, I'm 100% with you, and thank you for saying that, because I never understood it either. Like, it seems completely random that he gave him mistletoe arrows, and then, like, she was just all of a sudden like, you need to get these out of here. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah. It just seemed very random, which is fair, because we didn't know. But what it was that when Atreus' strap got broken by his arrow strap or something,
like his quiver strap.
Yeah, Kratos fixed it with some mistletoe, right?
From the arrows,
right?
Yeah.
So when Baldur punched Atreus in the
right, I think we chest, all understand.
Right? He gets stabbed and he loses his power. But the fact that like it's interesting to me because that tells me that Freya, like, and this is something I was going to note about Freya. I think Freya is actually like a lot more evil than she seems. Like on like a base level, like she's, I think, absolutely insane. It's just that most of the game, we only experienced the non-crazy side, but like the fact that she didn't hid that from you, that she did that to her son, that she goes crazy at you on the end, like everything tells me that Freya's like actually more evil than she's letting on.
Really? Yeah, I mean, she's unhinged. I mean, she was married to Odin. He did a bunch of terrible stuff to her. So, and she doesn't. She seems to feel bad about what her son's going through.
Yeah, but
I think she was just obsessed with keeping him safe, even to his own detriment. I don't think that makes her insane or evil. That seems like a normal, not normal, but like an easily explainable state of mind.
Well, I think if you think about the context of the gods and how they deal with each other, like they are always doing the most unnecessary thing, you know, which, right. And that's why like patricide or whatever you want to call it, like that's normal. And I feel like as much like, oh, she's broken and she's hurt and she's doing these things. I truly believe that like a part of who she is just this kind of like a little bit chaotic, like person.
Yeah, okay.
And then she's kind of like, oh, like all my people, they don't want to talk to me because I married Odin. And I'm like, I kind of get that, but I feel like she's hiding something like fundamentally. And I think that Kratos recognized it early, but like he kind of like, he's like, she's only beneficial to us because she's like, we're on her side right now. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think she's more bad than we notice. And I think it's going to come out in the next game.
I don't think so. I think that it's going to come. I think that her quest for vengeance for the death of her son is going to be the main motivator. I don't think she's like innately evil or insane or anything. She's just hyper focused on keeping her son safe, and then hyper focused, I assume, on revenge for you killing her son. I mean, she was willing to die right there just to keep him safe.
Right.
Like I don't. I mean, not that makes her. I'm just saying. I'm not saying that's like makes her good. I'm just saying that it indicates to me that that's really her main and driving motivation.
Because if she was completely crazy, then she probably would have chose herself over him in that moment.
Yeah, I mean, I get what you're saying. Like, her motivation, it's kind of like her motivation may not be like fundamentally bad, but I think that she is a person, like whatever her motivation is going to be at the detriment of everybody else other than what she wants. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, you think she's going to like maybe try to bring him back from the dead, but it's going to end the world or something, and she's going to do it anyway?
Like she's going to do whatever she has to do now to get vengeance. You know, she did whatever she had to do to protect her son, even though it fundamentally made him who he was to a horrible person. Yeah. So I think like she is not a good person. She's just a person who's like highly fixated on whatever's important to her and will do it whatever it takes at any cost to make that happen. You know?
Okay,
that seems to
I
be.
can get behind that.
That seems to be the running theme of like the sensibility of the gods. Like when Atreus realized he was a god, that's what his whole demeanor shifted to as well. Was that whatever I want to do is what's highest priority now because I'm a god who's going to tell me otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess whatever's intrinsically motivated by that might be different. But pretty much all of them share the sentiment that they're gonna do what they want to do because they're gods.
Exactly. And I think Kratos recognized that. He's like, all gods are just terrible people. They're just, you don't know what their terrible is until they exert it on you, you know? Because like even Athena, the reason he was caught up is Athena said that she would free him, but she basically kept him in bondage for like 20 years or something. Like, and he kept having to do horrible things for her, you know, for her benefit. So. No, but that's a good point. Any last remarks, Steve, before we wrap up?
I don't think so. I just, I really enjoyed my time with the game. I'm looking forward to continuing at my own pace. Yeah, it's good. It was good stuff. Thanks for talking.
Yeah. I think my last remark is simply that I'm really interested to learn more about Faye. I hope they do more background on who she was in this game.
Yeah, me too.
Because it's still a complete mystery other than that she was a giant. But, like, what does that even mean? Like, what was her role? Like, you know? Like, I feel like there's something more behind that. And I think we're going to learn more about Atreus and who he's going to become because of all that. And I have a feeling, I just have this weird feeling that Faye and Freya, like, have a history that we're unaware of. And it's going to get revealed in some way throughout this game. But anyway, that would be cool. So, yeah, thank you everybody for listening to today's episode. As you can see, we have a lot to say about this God of War game. Definitely, to me, I think it's still game of the year. Like, it's still, to me, it's
game of this
next year.
Next year.
Yeah, until
Ragnarok
comes out, you know. It's definitely my favorite game of the year. So if you haven't played it, please play it. We talked about it, but there's so many things we didn't touch, so many characters, so many set pieces, so much. There's so much in this game. It's definitely worth a play. And so anyway, thank you so much for listening to this episode. Of course, as always, we are thankful for you. Thank you, Kyle, for being here today. Thank you, my brother. Thank you.
Always a pleasure. Looking forward to getting that Kratos skin in Fortnite.
Oh, it's coming. It's already on the way. And, of course, thank you to my boy Steve. Thank you for joining us today on this.
You're welcome. It was a good time.
Okay, on this extended edition, that extended breath. Thank you. And, of course, thank you to all our fans. And as always, know that
Thank you, Brad.
Thank you. I appreciate it. You know, you can catch us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, and pretty much everywhere. YouTube, don't forget that.
In your backyard.
In your backyard and everywhere else. So please check us out. Thank you. And until next time, y'all have a blessed week, blessed year. Y'all take it easy. Peace.
Thank you, Braxton.
Boy.
Get the shovel, boy.